Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Healing Self-Injury, a compassionate guide for parents and other loved ones, by Janice Whitlock, Ph.D., and Elizabeth Lloyd-Richardson, Ph.D., narrated by Kim Niemi. Preface. Why you and why us? Why is this book for you? If you are the parent of an adolescent or young adult who self-injures or has done so in the past, this book is for you. First and foremost, we want to tell you that despite how helpless you may sometimes feel, you matter a lot. You are a critical part of what happens next. In fact, that's why we wrote this book. And if you are listening to it, then you may already know this at least to some degree. It's also likely that you have some questions about what self-injury is, why people do it, and most importantly, how to help your child, your family, and yourself. The daily demands of life with children and the need for steadiness and vision, even in the throes of uncertainty and child discontent, is a big, big job, one that can feel very lonely at times and which can leave us feeling like we do not matter at all. In truth, however, you matter in more ways than you probably realize. From us as parents and professionals to you, you do not need to have it all figured out. Your child did not start self-injuring because you failed. You will not fail your child now if you cannot get it all right. You have time. All that really matters at this point is that you are willing to grow, stretch, and learn alongside your child. It is our goal to help you better understand both your child's behavior and your own reactions to it. We hope to increase awareness of patterns that subtly and perhaps not so subtly affect communication between you and your child. And we hope to help you understand the importance of self-compassion and self-care through a time that can be as hard on you as it is on your child. Why this book may not be for you. For parents of children who are on the autism spectrum or have a developmental disability, you may have began listening to this book because you have a child that self-injures in relation to a long-standing disorder. This self-injury is often labeled as stereotypy or self-stimulatory behavior, and it is repetitive in nature and seen primarily in children with autism spectrum disorders, mental retardation, and developmental disabilities. In this book, we are primarily referring to non-suicidal self-injury, NSSI, that is not socially visible but is often chronic, tends to occur in youth with no other clear developmental challenges, and can come and go, sometimes with long periods of silence between episodes. This type of self-injury is commonly viewed by professionals as very different from that which is experienced by individuals with a developmental disability or on the autism spectrum. Stereotyped self-injury is likely observed by parents early in life, perhaps even as early as 2 to 3 years of age. These families may have come to some degree of equilibrium as they have learned to work around patterns of behavior and to accommodate family needs in a variety of ways. In these cases, parents typically come to understand self-injury as part of a complex spectrum of behaviors associated with their child's condition, and they would not likely find the information contained within this book to be relevant. However, a family with a higher functioning teen on the spectrum, formerly known as Asperger's syndrome, who also engages in NSSI may benefit from the material discussed here because it may help to identify ways to develop a deeper connection and to understand what factors trigger your teen's self-injury. Also important, while we rarely think about it in the same way, research shows that caregivers of youth who are experiencing emotional or psychological challenges such as self-injury, disordered eating, or depression, experience challenges similar to those felt by caregivers of physically or developmentally disabled children or elders. Why you matter so much. While we will examine some of the common family and parent-child-related issues that may contribute to self-injury, the majority of this book focuses on life after you find out about your child's self-injury. We focus largely on the information and skills likely to assist you in supporting your child's recovery process, as well as yourself and other family members. We focus on this because it has become increasingly clear that parents are critical allies in setting the stage for recovery and thriving. We hope to illustrate how true this is from individual families' stories as well as from what we know from science and research. Take, for example, 2 large studies of young adults and their experience with self-injury. One set of questions specifically asked with whom, e.g. peers, parents, therapists, adult friends, other professionals, etc., participants had talked about their self-injury and who they thought suspected it. Importantly, it was found that young adults wanted to be able to talk with their parents about self-injury, and they tend to find it helpful when they do. In fact, parents were more likely than anyone else to both initiate a conversation about self-injury and to be regarded by their young adult as the most helpful people to talk to about self-injury. In contrast, peers were one of the least helpful groups to talk to. Another good example of parents making a difference comes from studies of adolescents and young adults in therapy for one or more mental health challenges. While therapy itself is considered helpful, it is much more effective when caretakers are involved and engaged in the process. This is because interactions with parents and caretakers, easy and hard, are part of what forms or describes the authentic self, the part of each of us not defined or described by a job or role or by an idea of what we are supposed to be, but which reflects a deeper essence or sense of self. Moreover, it is in families, regardless of the forms they take, traditional or same-sex married, single-parent, divorced, and so on, that children learn that connections to one another matter and that communication between 2 family members can have effects on other family members and vice versa. These family communications, whether through spoken words, punctuated silence, a roll of the eyes, a disapproving look, clearly impact relations between family members in ways that children observe and learn to interpret regardless of how subtle they are. These exchanges also exert a profound impact on how we see ourselves and, in turn, communicate with others. By actively participating in the therapy process, parents and caretakers communicate several positive messages to their children, including, "I am willing, I care about you, and I am capable of tolerating the discomfort I am likely to feel at times during this process." The very act of participating, independent of what actually happens in therapy, is a message and influences what happens next. The communications happening with your teen and within your family are among the primary topics of this book. Listeners will come away with tools for understanding how parents' thoughts and beliefs about themselves, their children, and parenting itself strongly shape parent and child reactions to stress and to one another. These personal beliefs can contribute to stress and can set the stage for turmoil if they are not acknowledged and altered. Parents willing to recognize, accept, and heal deep-rooted beliefs and expectations that interfere with their ability to be fully present for their children can expect to see and experience tremendous healing and growth. Parents will also find that taking this step will allow them to be fully present for their child without feeling the need to fix everything they think is wrong. Why us? For each of us, the path to writing this book was a long and winding road, but one that we each traced to specific moments. We hope that you will find elements of your story here. Although both of us are scientists who study self-injury and related issues, the heart of this book comes from our experience as parents, partners, and friends to other people struggling with this and similar challenges in their families. Between us, we have 8 children and stepchildren who, at the time we started writing this, ranged in age from 7 to 23. We each have first-hand experience as mothers, and we are each acutely aware that life happens in moments, not in big events. The stories of ourselves, families, and even cultures are crafted through the everyday, often quiet exchange of looks, touch, words, or simple coexistence. We are also both keenly aware of how hard it can be to care for another person and how much we also need support as parents. Janice. It was deep winter in 2004 when a dear friend called to update me on her life and family. It had been a rough year, she shared, especially since she had learned recently that her daughter had been cutting herself. In addition to worrying that her daughter was suicidal, she had spent months soul-searching in hopes of understanding how her daughter could have arrived at such a dark place. Seeing the marks that the cuts left on her daughter's arms was viscerally painful for her, and she worried immensely for her daughter's future. My heart went out to them both, and I was left with a million questions. Having been intrinsically interested in adolescence since I was an adolescent myself, I had given a large chunk of my professional career to understanding and addressing issues related to the adolescent passage. At the age of 25, I had become a big sister to a 12-year-old girl I met while working in one of the programs for which I provided sexuality education. I later became a foster parent for her, and through this became deeply familiar with the way her pain etched itself onto her body, through a persistent eating disorder, nightmares, a seemingly endless array of traumatic memories, deep issues with trust and intimacy, and a profound gratitude for any small kindness an adult showed to her, a rare and sometimes disconcerting orientation for someone of that age. I also, however, witnessed her amazing strength and resilience, a deep well of hope and willingness to trust that her life could be something better, even though she couldn't imagine what or how. It was thanks to her that I began to understand the complex relationship between dark nights of the soul and suffering and the intractable capacity for human hope, recovery, and growth. However, nothing in my experience with my foster daughter or the vast majority of the young, vulnerable, and troubled high-risk kids I had worked with prepared me for dealing with the issue of self-injury. I was intrigued and also very puzzled after that 2004 call from my friend. When less than a week later another friend confided in me that her child was also a cutter, my curiosity became too persistent to ignore. Why, I wondered, would a young person growing up in a typical and largely supportive family want to slice, burn, scratch, or otherwise damage his or her body? This curiosity led me on a long and winding road that resulted in research that has dominated the past decade of my professional life and that is chronicled on the Cornell Research Program on Self-Injury and Recovery website, selfinjury.bctr.cornell.edu. We maintain a wide variety of resources on this website for all who are directly or indirectly affected by self-injury. We will describe this site in more detail in the book's Resources section. Over the past decade, I have encountered self-injury in my extended family and close friends network, and I've helped one of my children through a hard passage that spanned more than a year and included depression and anxiety, among other things. She, like so many of the young people we talked with for this book, feels emotions very strongly and has struggled to manage them. She has also struggled with a tendency toward negative thinking. This left her less than ideally equipped to meet some of the challenges that life presented. These tendencies, coupled with adolescence itself, culminated in a series of experiences and events that left her on edge. Over the course of the year that she had periods of strong depression, I experienced firsthand what many of the parents listening to this book experience. The need I had to fix her life, to somehow find the combination of ingredients that would resolve all of the perceptions and experiences that hurt her, led me to confront and to ultimately simply coexist with a fairly chronic sense of powerlessness, vigilance, and hopefulness during the good moments. It also provided opportunities for growth, expansion, and a sense of surrender that has helped me be a better parent, a better scholar, and a better person. So it is my hope that what I share here reflects both my professional experience and my personal experience of parenting a complex child in a complex world. Elizabeth. Much of my time in graduate school was spent traveling the back roads of Louisiana, heading to various psychiatric hospitals to interview teenagers who had recently been admitted for attempting suicide or who were dangerously close to suicide. I wanted to hear and understand the stories these teens had to share and to learn how their experiences grew to be so different from what I understood to be normal teenage angst. So in 1996, I began interviewing teens who I thought would serve as a normal comparison group to hospitalized youth. I had placed advertisements in local newspapers asking teens to come talk with me in a brief interview in exchange for some small monetary compensation. The teenagers coming to meet with me were normal by all appearances. Some came directly from track or cheerleading practice, still in their uniforms. Some wore all black, long bangs arching across their faces. Some came burdened with heavy backpacks full of that evening's homework. I was surprised and shocked to learn that many of these teenagers shared dark and troubling stories of emotional pain, a pain they didn't know what to do with, turning it outward and expressing it through cutting, burning, or scraping their own skin. To be honest, I had never heard of this. My psychology textbooks had taught me that self-injury was rather common among severely mentally disabled individuals as a way to cope with biochemical abnormalities in the brain, or to manage pain, or perhaps to gain social attention. But why would this happen among teens who were of average intelligence with no disabilities? I could see only the drawbacks of causing injury and pain to the body, but were there hidden benefits to cutting that I was unable to see? Who were these teens who were injuring, and why were they doing this? These questions were the beginning of my doctoral dissertation, a research project spanning several years, which allowed me a look into hundreds of teenagers' lives. More than 400 teens from high schools across the Midwestern and Southern states completed anonymous surveys indicating whether they had ever purposefully injured themselves, what they had done, and why they had done it. The results were shocking. Self-injury did not appear to play favorites. It touched the lives of girls and boys, blacks and whites, poor and wealthy. Roughly 1 in 4 teenagers reported harming themselves, with this happening an average of 13 times over the past year. While I was used to working with hospitalized, suicidal teens, I was unprepared to learn that so many teens were experiencing such suffering. Furthermore, teens reported that their self-harm had come to serve a variety of purposes for them, most commonly to stop bad feelings or to feel something, even if it was pain. Over the years, I have learned a great deal about who is likely to self-injure and what motivates them to go to these lengths. I have interviewed hundreds of teenagers and young adults about their self-harm, both suicidal and non-suicidal. I no longer make assumptions about what is or isn't normal teenage angst. I appreciate the tremendous work that teenagers have in growing up, and I'm not referring to that after-school job they managed to score just down the street. Teens are faced with the prospect of learning how to regulate their time, their ambitions, their relationships, and perhaps most importantly, their emotions. My professional work over the past 25 years has shown me that teens use many unhealthy maladaptive coping strategies to meet their emotional needs. Self-injury can be included along with the usual suspects, such as alcohol and drugs, internet porn addiction, and eating disorders. While I am aware of all that science has to offer on these topics, I can't help but find myself concerned about my own children's winding path through the teenage years. What will it be like for them? Aside from rolling them up in a thick layer of bubble wrap and duct tape or locking them away in a Rapunzel-like tower, how can I help them develop the skills necessary to navigate these often treacherous waters? They are still young and have a few years before they reach pre-teendom, but regardless, I have realized that many of the very same strategies and tools that we discuss in this book are useful too in laying a healthy foundation of respect, trust, and open communication necessary for the lifelong journey we parents make with our children, no matter what their age. I sincerely hope that you find this book to be as engaging and hopeful as we have felt while writing it. Introduction. Why this book? And why now? This book results from years of in-depth conversations, surveys, and interviews with youth and parents of youth who self-injure. It also comes from a growing number of studies from the United States and from abroad that persistently show that parents play a particularly powerful role in the recovery process. All of these sources portray parents who care, parents who worry, and parents who are willing and able to stick by their children through the sometimes very rocky terrain that can mark this passage. Our studies also reveal how parents are affected. parents whose physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and overall mental health and well-being can be profoundly impacted by living with children who injure their bodies, the bodies that their parents helped to create and nurture. It can be difficult for parents to watch their child suffer, particularly when that suffering is brought about at the child's own hand. And in cases where parents have contributed to their children's suffering, the guilt and shame can be crippling. If you are listening to this book, then you have already taken the first step. You are clearly a parent who cares, a parent who should know that you are not alone, and that when your child begins the recovery process, you are likely to play a critical role as supporter, cheerleader, and role model for how to manage the ups and downs of a rocky road to recovery. Preview of what is to come. We are just two of a growing number of scholars whose curiosity about self-injury led them to investigate it in the early part of the new millennium. We are now part of a caring cadre of researchers and clinicians in the United States, Europe, Australia, Canada, China, and a number of other places around the world exploring self-injury and its relationship to other mental health challenges, emotional regulation, cognition, family structure, how it may spread from one individual to another, and a variety of other topics that will comprise the science reported in this book. The goal of this book is to help you understand where your child's self-injury comes from, why he or she does it, and how to help your child identify, build, and use skills that will assist him or her in recovering from and growing beyond self-injury. We also hope to help parents understand that there are rich opportunities for personal and familial growth as a result of the process of recovering from self-injury. Indeed, many young people and their families can and do find healing, closer relationships, and deeper levels of communication and authentic living as a result of navigating this challenge. In service to these goals, this book is divided into 4 sections. The first gives an overview of self-injury, what it is, how common it is, and what we know about those who self-injure. Included is consideration of the factors that lead to self-injury and how inner thoughts and feelings can interact with outside factors like family, peers, and school to affect development of and recovery from self-injury. We discuss in detail the role of the family and how your understanding of these factors is critical to your ability to aid in your child's successful recovery and growth. The second section is devoted to recovery, treatment, and review of the skills that individuals who injure typically need in order to overcome self-injury impulses and behaviors. We talk about common types of treatment and how these are used to develop the key skill areas and strategies needed for recovery. We expect that knowing about these issues will help you identify what might be contributing to your child's self-injury. In this section, we will also help you assess your child's stage of readiness to change. Understanding the basic recovery process is often key to treatment and recovery work. We'll also help you understand how to reframe your experience from disorder to discovery, including new ways of thinking about what progress and recovery mean. The third section tells you how you can be your child's partner in the healing process. Based on information you've gathered, we recommend activities, strategies, and other ways to help support the recovery process. We focus on developing skills to improve mindfulness, regulate emotions, and manage negative thoughts. We also address the limits of what you can realistically do and the profound importance of taking care of yourself in the process. The fourth section is devoted to dealing with the practical matters common in families with a child who self-injures, issues related to the nuts and bolts of talking about self-injury productively, negotiating specific issues associated with self-injury such as safety contracts, power struggles, and access to self-injury implements, and developing strategies for obtaining support from people around you. While you may consider jumping right to this section to get started, we hope that you'll hang with us through the first few sections as we walk you through information we know is critical to understanding and effectively using these practical skills. The knowledge, skills, and tools included throughout this book are based on our years of clinical and research work in this area. Interviews with individuals who self-injure, as well as with parents and therapists, and our understanding of current research on these issues. We hope that we can provide you with answers to your many questions about self-injury and with useful strategies for how to best help your child. Where we think it will help, we include comments from some of the many parents and youth we have worked or spoken with as part of our research. While the names attributed to each comment are pseudonyms, the ages and actual comments have not been modified other than to omit obscuring words such as and ah. Preparing for the activities and reflection exercises in this book. In almost every chapter, you will hear activities, reflection exercises, and/or worksheets that are intended to help you understand and apply the concepts and skills that we review. In preparation, we suggest that you dedicate a journal for recording your activity responses, thoughts, impressions, or takeaways. This may be a journal you already have, one that you purchased for this process, or something that you keep electronically. Don't worry, we don't expect you're going to completely fill it, although you might. Mostly it's an opportunity to keep all of your work, reflections, and epiphanies in one place as you move through the book. It can be helpful to look it over when you're done or even as you go along. Reflection Activity 1. Reflection Activity 1. Intention Setting. In preparation for the effort that you will put into learning from this book, it is helpful to take a few minutes to consider what you want from it. The Parenting Intention worksheet explained at the end of this introduction is designed to help you reflect on this and to set your parenting intentions. As you probably know, an intention is an act of deciding on a goal or purpose. It is like deciding on a general place you want to go and then finding the North Star in the night sky by which to navigate in that general direction. While the terrain you will cross may be unknown, your sense of where you want to go and why you want to go there is generally constant. What you may not know about the word intention is that it also refers to the act or fact of healing or the healing process in medical lexicons. How appropriate is that? Like planning for a trip or family vacation, there is still so much to learn about your destination, what you might encounter along the way, and how you might best prepare. Similarly, the process of healing begins with an intention. This intention doesn't specify the how. It can only describe the desire and the general location of one's desire. In other words, an intention can inspire and can direct our attention, focus, and purpose, but the how and actual experience of the journey is usually unknown. Take a few minutes to listen to and complete the Parenting Intention worksheet with regard to parenting your child through this time. Why did you pick this book? What are you hoping you'll get from it? Most importantly, as a parent, what do you hope to communicate to or encourage, support, or engender in your child right now? It will be especially interesting to revisit these thoughts when you're done with this book or along the way when things get confusing or frustrating. Parenting Intention Worksheet. 1. What values do you want to teach your child? This might include, for example, valuing respect, the importance of friendships, respect for authority, a strong sense of integrity, a deep connection to family. In other words, what do you hope your child will value and hold dear as he or she moves into adulthood and beyond? Write down 2 or 3 that are important to you. 2. What skills do you hope that your child will have mastered or be on her way to mastering by the time she reaches adulthood? This might include, for example, the capacity for deep honesty, the ability to work really hard even when she wants to quit, or being able to manage money well. In other words, what do you hope your child will be able to do well as he or she moves into adulthood and beyond? Write down 2 or 3 that are important to you. 3. Write down 2 or 3 examples of how you know that you already model these values and skills for your child. Record 1 set for values and 1 set for skills, e.g., if you value respect, how do you demonstrate respect to your child? If you value emotional regulation and balance, how do you demonstrate these to your child? Please provide 3 brief examples. Be as specific as possible. 4. Can you think of 1 or 2 examples where your behavior might not be in line with your intentions? Most of us have areas of misalignment. These are places where we value something, but that isn't really the way we live, or we don't really communicate that. For example, we may value eating healthfully, but demonstrate that we can't live without our one Diet Coke every day. Or we may say we value being honest, but notice that we hold back a lot of our true feelings and thoughts. Can you find a few places where you are not in good alignment with any of the parenting intentions you have identified?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?